This paper is how easyJet went about building an incredible brand whilst cutting costs.
The business was doing very well, but there were some storm clouds on the horizon.
In truth, many of these decisions were quite risky. They were quite brave.
It really shows a business living its values.
We don't have a posh office, we don't do pot plants.
TV clearly rose to the top, certainly when we're dealing with emotion.
This makes an absolute must-read case study, I think.
You and me, no one else, nothing else but us right now. And I ain't need nothing else, no one else but you and I. And it ain't me, it ain't you, it's only us, it's us right now. You finding it, take it.
easyJet's a great paper. I think it really shows a business living its values right through into the way it plans its communication. That kind of ruthless drive for efficiency was applied here. So not only could they get more out of their communication, but they did it by spending less.
In 2010 we were around 15 years old, and we built a very successful business based around selling seats for $29.99 around Europe. The business was doing very well actually, it was profitable, but there were some storm clouds on the horizon, and the new management team came in and realised that what had worked for the past 15 years wouldn't necessarily work for the next even 5.
So easyJet were built as a low-cost airline, and they sort of held their own up until this point. But I think 2010 we could clearly see there was increased competition from Ryanair, obviously, but new entrances like Wizz and Norwegian, who were really driving in incredibly aggressive prices, well below what easyJet could profitably afford to run. And at the same time, the flag carriers, who had traditionally always been incredibly expensive, even they were starting to bring their pricing down. So what we found was easyJet was sort of sitting in a squeezed middle place of being attacked by their low-cost competitors on price, and also having perceptionally better service competitors bringing their price in line with easyJet too. And we need to find a new way to really build the business out.
easyJet Lean, it was a structured program to actively take cost out of the business incrementally every single year without impacting on obviously safety or customer experience.
The whole purpose and the whole ambition of Carolyn McCall and the whole management team was to attract a very different set of customers to what they had. A set of customers who were more affluent, more likely to travel for business through easyJet, and as a result more likely to pay more per seat every time, which would obviously start to increase margins, and they were almost certainly going to pay more for ancillary things like fast track, allocated seating, reserved seats and so on. Direct response can't do that because it's purely speaking to an existing audience. The role of brand building is to actually reach out to these new audiences.
We want to build a brand, but we cannot do it at the expense of short-term sales. They're a listed company, quarterly results are poured over by the city, and we could not instigate a new way of working that would result in the share price falling through the floor.
So our philosophy is essentially, if we can get a sale for free or directly to our site, why should we pay for it? And just having that philosophy and bringing that into everything that we did enabled us to net some quite healthy savings, which we then ploughed into brand building activity. You know, if you come to our office, we are in a hangar in Luton Airport. We don't have a posh office. We don't do pot plants. We don't do stationary cupboards. If you want a cup of tea, you buy it. And just that low-cost culture kind of permeates everything that we do. Absolutely never compromise on safety, but everything else we look to try and just make sure that we're only spending what we need to. Is it incrementally adding benefits to customers and kind of driving a positive return? And that really was the challenge, that balancing act of sort of changing strategy while also keeping the momentum of the business going. That's the kind of the marketing interpretation of easyJet Lean, but easyJet Lean was a process that went through our operations department, our flight crew department, our engineering department, finance. It sort of touched all parts of our business, and it's ongoing as well. So it's kind of a culture and a state of mind, really.
So from a media point of view, the big target for us was our digital spend. About 76% of all of the spend for easyJet was being spent within digital display and search. So clearly, if we were going to make savings, it had to come from there. So the display area of our activity was quite an interesting one. I would imagine back in 2010, you couldn't move for an easyJet ad. We had at least 7 display partners sitting in the mix, and they were duplicating, in a lot of instances, their inventory, a blind network. So we could end up with 3 or 4 partners all serving the ad, an easyJet ad, onto the same page. And so through attribution modelling, we were able to reduce the volume of partners from 7 to 3. It was almost £2 million a year saving just in the UK alone. So search accounted for about 50% of all of the media tracked sales. That's a big business. We couldn't afford for our suspicions to be wrong and to impact the business. We found as soon as we started switching off our brand keyword terms, we saw no impact in the overall sales that search was driving. Simply, all of the traffic was just falling onto the natural search keyword term that was there, which was brilliant, because it meant we could save money immediately. So that was in the region of about £4 million a year that we were able to save. So with the £6 million roughly that we thought we'd saved in the UK, clearly that would allow us to fund new activity, and we had to define what that was going to be. So having traditionally been, I guess, quite rational in our approach of Alicante for £15 or less if you were lucky, we had to build a bit more emotion into it. Clearly, research was showing that people weren't getting on a plane for getting on a plane. They wanted to go on holiday, they wanted to go to exciting destinations or important business meetings, because ultimately sales decisions are not purely rational. There is a lot of trust and emotion that's built into that process too, and we needed to leverage that more.
And that was a lovely space that we could get into, and it led to our first advertising campaign, Where Are You Going? And we showed pictures of people with the answers, to dance all night, to fall in love, to see things I've never seen.
Reviewing all of the channels that we had to hand, TV clearly rose to the top, certainly when we're dealing with emotion, and also, more importantly as well, trying to build the experience that easyJet was going to be able to deliver its customers, the visual, the oral, the sense of impact that TV can provide.
So this was all about getting us away from the commodity marketplace of kind of cheap seats to Malaga, and much more into brand territory that had previously only been inhabited by the likes of Lufthansa and Air France and KLM and British Airways and Alitalia. That's where we saw our marketplace for the future, and that was the challenge to the agency, which they delivered and are still delivering now.
The brand tracking that we got from the first advertising campaign, it almost immediately started to show that we were seeing an improvement in key metrics. Recall was significantly increased. We were outperforming the likes of BA. And I think the important thing was also, whilst we were trying to catch up with BA, we were also trying to separate away from Ryanair. So we were finding ourselves in exactly the sort of middle ground that we wanted, that no one was seeing us as too expensive, but they were starting to see much higher levels of relevance, much higher perceptions of quality, and much higher likability, which is one of those things where you can't underestimate the importance and the value of that.
And this year we're undertaking some changes to our airports, and so we're investing again some of the savings that we're making throughout the business into an improved airport experience.
As a pan-European business, we were active in 6 main markets across Europe, and ultimately 10 to 11 markets on a regular basis. There is always that challenge of trying to take an idea from the UK and expand that across Europe. Cultural differences, and actually the way that media is consumed is so fundamentally different in many of the countries that you can't just take the perfect blueprint and drop it into France or Italy or Switzerland or Germany and expect it to work. So we had to find a different way of building the consistent approach for easyJet across Europe.
But from an efficiency perspective, we have to make a core set of creative assets, whether it be TV films or photography. So we do it once here in the UK. So it's not about translating headlines or copy lines. It's about understanding the spirit of what we're trying to do with that piece of work, and then the local agency writing their own headlines, doing their own adaptation of that work to make it feel locally relevant.
The owned media should never be overlooked. It was a big deal for easyJet, with a huge database of potential contacts, using that more effectively and more efficiently over the course of the campaign, as well as they're making greater use of the in-flight magazines and the planes, the seat packs, their own media themselves, was going to be a phenomenal opportunity for easyJet to gain advantage on the rest of their competitors. Generation easyJet is an interesting vehicle. It is about recognising that easyJet has changed us as a generation. We're allowed to now travel at the drop of a hat for the price of a pair of jeans that our parents never got to do. And I think it's important that easyJet are standing there and acknowledging the fact that they have helped all of us have these amazing experiences, and will continue to do that going forward.
When we started to look at what our new campaign would kind of look and feel like, one of the big things we just came out with was just when you're queuing up, you'll be in the line with some business travellers. There'll be some guys in pink tutus going to a stag weekend. Old age pensioners enjoying the fact they don't have kids anymore. There'll be some young lovers. There'll be some a school party and children, and we just wanted to kind of celebrate that diversity really, and we very much see our own employees and our people as part of Generation easyJet, and they I think feel it too.
So as part of the approach and the audiences we needed to reach, business travellers were going to be key. They're perfectly picking up those Monday to Friday flights that had capacity.
If you're not flying to and from the right airports at the right times of day, no matter how good the marketing is going to be, you're not going to get that sale. So we made very sure that the product was good enough, first of all, and some just some basic things like, are the flights available to buy through global distribution systems, for example.
Why run around like all the others? Last year, on average, we were more punctual across Europe than British Airways. That's why it makes complete business sense to fly easyJet.
It worked from a targeted point of view. We absolutely got to those business customers in quite innovative and I think quite a brave way, but we also managed to basically sell more seats to leisure customers as well. And our planes are fuller than they've ever been. So we look at load factor, which is the percentage of our seats that we've actually sold, and it's around about the kind of 90% mark now, which is kind of class leading in global aviation. So we're able to fill our planes. We've been able to gently increase the revenue per seat that we've been able to take. And all that has been down to attracting a more affluent customer who's prepared to spend a little bit more with us. And obviously when you have a slightly more affluent customer on board, they're spending more money on coffees and teas and the kind of ancillary products that we sell. And that all helps drive margin improvement.
I think they built the brand easyJet through product and price, and continues to be a really important part of the way they communicate. But I think this shows a real step change in their starting to embrace the need to create an emotional bond with the brand. And I think the Generation easyJet concept allows them to do that in a way that's really credible.
The whole process of going about identifying those cost savings around PPC was something no one else was doing, and no one dared do. But they found a way to test and trial that without missing a single beat in terms of sales performance and exposing the business to risk.
From a data perspective and anecdotally, it feels like the combined efforts of everyone in the business, and it's certainly not just a marketing thing, has elevated the brand and enabled us to talk to people that I don't think we could legitimately and credibly talk to a few years ago.
We have found a way of being able to build a brand without actually spending more money, spending less, and it's driven by making sure that we're driving efficiency. That comes to the measurement. It's making sure that we're measuring the right output, not just an output that is easy to measure. By doing that and maintaining that simple but focused framework, we can drive these great gains across the whole of Europe, as we've done over the last 3 years and continue to do today.
You and I, no one else, nothing else but you and I.